I told you I'm gonna do a review of this game, so here it is, late as always. Welcome to appabend's Uncapped, a series of reviews by yours truly. Today's review is gonna be on Death Stranding, Kojima's brand new game starring Norman Reedus, Mads Mikkelsen, and many others. But before we get started, YouTube is probably gonna demonetize this video, you never know. So if you'd like to support my work, you can do so by checking the links down below. Death Stranding is the story of Sam Porter Bridges, a porter delivering all sorts of items in a post-apocalyptic America. He's being tasked by his sister Emily to save her from a group of separatists and reconnecting a divided America through the use of chiral networks. What kind of mysteries that the new post-apocalyptic world bring, and will Sam be able to reconnect America and make it great again? That's basically what the story boils down to, and I gotta say, for a story written and directed by Kojima, this is one of his tamest. You'd expect for a guy who has his own production company to absolutely let loose on his creative endeavors, and while I can certainly see it in some aspects, it's not as prominent as any of his other games. Metal Gear Solid 5 is more bombastic than this, and compared to the rest of the series, that game is rather tame. Kind of fitting actually, considering that this isn't really a typical Kojima action game. Now where do I start with the story? The best way to describe my thoughts on the story is that it's very fascinating. A lot of Kojima's stories are always fascinating. It's nothing new on paper, but it's pretty interesting as you dive in forward. It's a hostile world dominated by supernatural creatures, with not just the creatures themselves, but also the weather being a danger to you. I love how, unlike any other post-apocalyptic worlds, killing people should be avoided at all costs in this one. Since the world of the living and the dead are somewhat interconnected, killing someone would actually cause a huge catastrophe, unless if their bodies are incinerated, which is why they have their own dedicated incinerators that needs to be very far away from town. I also love the different human enemies in the game. The mules are there just for your cargo, so they're not gonna risk killing you for the sake of it. They're just gonna knock you unconscious. The terrorists, however, will kill you, and they won't care about incinerating the body because they just want chaos and destruction. There's no world any other like Death Stranding. Not only that it's well realized, but it's also very beautifully rendered. It's certainly one of the prettier looking open world PS4 games out there. I really love how the environment's terrains play a huge role in the stability of your character. So you're not just walking from one place to another, you're gonna have to consider how to get through all of these awkward terrains while maintaining your stamina and trying your hardest to push through them. The character designs are also very top-notch. They're able to accurately replicate the actors that play them, or at least the likeness of some of the people. I want to gush in on the world building and the story more, but I do have one significant problem with it. It over-explains everything. The game always does two things: repeating the same information that's already being told to us, or telling an already obvious information. The game does it all the time, to the point where the entire game feels like a tutorial. In fact, the first 5 to 6 hours of the game is nothing but being bombarded with the most basic stuff. I recommend you to skip a lot of the game's redundant dialogues, especially the ones explaining the really obvious tools, as if I don't know what a stun bomb is. But hey, at least you're not getting through a Kojima game not understanding anything, and to the game's credit, I did understand a lot of its terminologies like BTs, chiral networks, bridges, BBs, etc. I just feel like I'm being treated like a toddler or someone who doesn't really pay attention to the game's story. But considering that Kojima is aiming for the American audiences, and considering that the American audiences have the attention span of a toddler while being explained quantum physics, I don't blame them from explaining every single thing. Americans like something more flashy and bombastic, not something complex, metaphorical, and requires actual thought. Oof, roasted. But that's the issue with Kojima as a whole. He has great ideas, great world building, and great characters on paper, but he's not very good at presenting them. Information that could have been presented through showing are presented through a text log dump or an audio chat dump. Things that your average viewers can figure out have to be explained like 5 to 6 times so that you can know what it's all about. And this causes a lot of confusion on the story department because Kojima is trying to appeal to both audiences, people who really like blockbuster action films and people who really like their symbolic metaphorical stories stories, he's trying to explain the symbolic metaphorical content to the people who are in it for mindless fun. You don't explain to a toddler about the concept of metaphors. And the people who do like symbolic metaphorical content are insulted by the explanation because the game treats them like they're idiots. And with this, we're going to have the issue of characters being nothing but exposition dumpers with little to no personality. I have to do this because of this. I have to do this because of that. I'm doing this because this is a necessary thing to do for mankind to survive. While the characters do have tragic backstories on them that makes you to sympathize, I don't feel any sort of connection to them before they tell these backstories. These characters are there telling them how things work and what I should do for the next mission, which makes them rather bland and forgettable. You only remember them as task givers and information dumpers rather than actual characters. I kind of like Norman Reedus as the main character, especially his rough and grisly voice that sounds quite a lot like Snake at times. In fact, he's basically playing the role of Snake throughout the entire game, someone who's really good at his job but doesn't really care about anything else as long as he finishes it, someone who has an emotional connection towards a certain blonde woman that he considers to be his family and who's going to do whatever it takes to find her and find out the truth about the world that surrounds him. That doesn't sound familiar at all, doesn't it? Unfortunately, I don't really feel that Sam's character actually develops throughout the course of the storyline. I don't feel like he's actually gaining emotional connections with the people around him. He's mostly just talking to them as if they're his employers rather than another human being. I also find it weird that Sam very rarely talks in the terminal sections or the codex sections, as if he's just a silent protagonist in there. The lack of banter and interaction between the characters just leave a rather weak impression on me. Snake gains his character thanks to the interactions with his partners, not just being silent all the time. Thankfully, the story isn't all serious and gloomy. There are definitely some really fun aspects to the story, like Troy Baker as the villain. He is freaking amazing. Kojima just absolutely wants him to let loose on the role. He's really having tons of fun, and his boss fight in particular, I won't spoil it, but it's so bad it's funny. I would actually recommend you to look for it on YouTube or something if you don't mind the spoilers, because it makes for a great laugh. Overall, the story is quite intriguing and I really want to know what happens next. I do want to know the mysteries of the world inside it. The more I play the game, the more I become curious of it, but it's not by any means a perfect story. Kojima is amazing on the world building, but his delivery could be a lot better, and the ending sequence is way too freaking long. I mean, for God's sake, just get on with it! Would I recommend the game purely for the story? Probably not, because there are tons and tons of other gameplay content that hampers it. And speaking of gameplay content, let's now talk about it. I know some of you snarky little buggers are gonna go, what gameplay? It's a Hideo Kojima game. It's gonna be like 60 hours cutscenes and only 5 hours of actual gameplay. Here's something quite shocking for you guys. This is a Hideo Kojima game that actually has more gameplay content than story content, if you can get past the tedious hours and hours of tutorial. Like I said, the game over-explains pretty much everything, including the tutorials. There's just way too many dialogues of the characters explaining every little detail about the game's elements in the first 5 to 6 hours of the game. It actually makes you feel to have less control on this game. I don't feel like I'm playing a game. I feel like I'm watching someone explaining how to play a game, but they wouldn't give me the game until they finish explaining it for hours. So I recommend just skip the dialogues, unless if there are information that you don't know yet. If you can get past the tedious hours and hours of tutorial, this game is basically Euro Truck Simulator. You're delivering packages after packages from locations after locations, either by walking or with your bike or later a truck. You get to upgrade your arsenal and equip yourself with many different tools to help you throughout the journey. You will also encounter mules, as in raiders, who are going to steal your stuff and take you down. There are also the separatists who are more interested in killing you. And of course you encounter the BTs, the supernatural creatures roaming around the post-apocalyptic Earth who will not give you a good time. Now that does sound like a huge turnoff for a lot of people out there who are going to Kojima games and expecting another installment of Metal Gear Solid, but here's the weirdest part about this game. I got addicted by it. I was about to play this game for just a couple of hours, starting from 6 p.m. right after dinner, until I realized that it's already past 1 a.m. and I haven't taken a shower. I was thinking about beating the living crap out of everybody in the mule camp, take their trucks and steal all their resources so that I can build roads and bridges before sending package that I have to another guy, and then the guy gives me another package to send to another guy. Whether or not you enjoy this game depends entirely on whether or not you enjoy the kinds of games that give you mundane jobs to do, like driving a truck from one part of the continent to another or fixing people's PC. People are joking around about how this is a simulator game, and it is, but no one has ever asked if it's a good simulator game. Because we do have legit good simulators out there, the ones that would let you hundreds and hundreds of hours. And in terms of a simulator game, this game does a lot of things right. For the most part. The interface is obnoxiously terrible. It's beautifully designed, well animated, but functionally broken UI that only wastes your time more than ever. Why do I have to go to separate screens if I want to recycle or put my stuff in a private locker? How about selecting the item that you want, and when you're done, pick the option that you want, either recycle or put in private locker? Wouldn't that be a lot cleaner and more convenient? Also, do not play this game when you're logged out. When you play this game, log in online because you'll be able to see things that other players make, and they can be incredibly useful. Players might leave vehicles around the road that you can use, and unfortunately I couldn't get those vehicles early on, even though they would be very useful to travel through a lot of the parts in the game. Not only that, but they're also going to contribute into building the roads in the game, which requires a lot of materials that you wouldn't be able to gather by yourself. But that's just the delivery gameplay. We haven't even talked about the combat. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there are actual combat gameplay in this game. There are even boss battles too, but all of them have the same problem. They're way too easy! Let's start with the human enemies, like the mules or the terrorists. Here's how you deal with them. Punch the living crap out of them. If that's not possible, just grab a cargo and beat them with it. You'll knock them out for a while. And by for a while, I mean until you reload your game. If that's not possible, have a bola gun that might be lying around in their camp somewhere. Shoot them, tie them up, and stomp them once they're tied up. You can also counter their melee attacks using your strand and just knock them out by tying them. If that's not enough, later in the game you get access to non-lethal assault rifles. Shoot them once in the head and you're done! No more hassle! Sounds very easy, doesn't it? Because it is very easy, and it's a consistent trend in Kojima games. While Kojima is very good at world building narrative-wise, he's not so good at keeping it consistent with the gameplay side. The BTs are these mysterious supernatural creatures that are roaming around the earth. We don't know about them, we don't know how to take them down. All we know is that they form large handprints on the ground, and they're going to mess you up if you get caught. Then the gameplay portion comes in, and they only slightly annoy you. They just appear from the ground and grab you while you can just try to break free and run away. It's like if the Alien games let you to break off the facehuggers by doing a QTE. And please don't mention the ones that do that. But that's not even the worst part of the BTs. These BTs are presented to be this really difficult and seemingly unkillable creature, but they're actually very easy to deal with. It's actually a lot harder for you to navigate through the terrains than killing these things. Here's how I deal with the BTs, which I will dub as the where's the manager method. Grab a couple of hematic grenades, 4 of them should be enough, which means that you have 20 grenades. Do your usual delivery stuff until you encounter a BT. Step outside a vehicle, make sure that the vehicle is far away from the BT zone because you'd be doing some serious pickup otherwise. Run towards the nearest BT and ask them where the manager is, and let them carry you to the manager in charge. That's where you're going to encounter the manager, these monstrous BT figures who serve as the game's boss battle of some kind. You can just run away from the boss, which is the cheap option, or you can fight the boss, which is the fun option. This is where you can throw your hematic grenades, and if you have a standard weapon, just shoot them in the red areas that you created with the hematic grenades. Or just shoot them with the hematic ammos that you'll get later on. In result, tons and tons of chiral crystals after you beat the boss, and no more BTs and time falls in the area. for a while. Now that does sound ridiculously easy, and trust me, it really is. At least until the monster BTs decided to pull off their insta-kill moves. But there's a caveat to the entire thing. Even if you did all of that, the BTs will eventually respawn in around 10 minutes or so. Oh, wait a second, never mind. As soon as I reviewed the footage of how long does it take for a BT to respawn, it turns out that it takes around 5 to 6 minutes. Damn, kinda makes that entire freaking fight pointless, isn't it? That's definitely enough time for you to get your vehicle and get through that area as soon as possible, but not enough time for you to go around the area and find out the stuff that the BTs are trying to protect. I'd have to say that while the gameplay is super addicting, there are just these really odd design choices that Kojima made that just hampers the experience one way or the other. If you want to truly enjoy this game, you really have to set yourself a project of what you want to do. Do you want to raid mule camps and grab the materials to build the roads? Do you want to travel across one part of the map or the other to deliver tons and tons of cargoes through rough terrains? Even doing some BT hunting is fun. To sum up, Death Stranding is an incredibly polarizing game for a good reason. The game has this big budget AAA marketing with big name actors involved in it, so it's supposed to be a blockbuster type of ordeal, but in reality, the gameplay is intended for very specific people who enjoys delivery simulators, and the story is intended for people who love their stories to be more symbolic and metaphorical, rather than the straightforward story with relatable characters. It's a really confusing blend of mainstream elements and niche elements being put together, kind of like advertising Donnie Darko as a superhero film. Now, would I recommend Death Stranding? Honestly, I don't know if you're going to enjoy this game. This game is both a hit and a miss with everyone. It's either really good or really bad, and I noticed that it's never really in between. I can't really say if it's good for you or really bad for you. I did, however, tell you how the gameplay works and how the story goes, so from those information, I want you to make a decision if this game is gonna be for you or not. You're the only person who knows what's good for you, so inform yourself by looking at the gameplay footage or read reviews or watch reviews and make your decision. This is a $60 game after all. As for me, well, I think this game is very good for me. It's been a while since I play a game that makes me to ignore my responsibilities for several hours. These days, thanks to me being very busy with my papers and my campus work and all of that, I only play games for maybe 1 to 2 hours per day, which I know is very filthy casual numbers, but I am very busy, guys. This game made me to play it for hours upon hours on end, and I just couldn't stop playing it. I have tons and tons of fun with it, even if the actions are fairly mundane. But that's just my experience though. I think this game is amazing, and it did leave a very significant impact on me, but it's definitely not for everybody. What matters is whether or not you understand why people either love the game or hate the game. And after playing the game for almost 60 hours, I can totally see both perspectives.